off of what will become the post for the front porch here. On the ground behind him there, you can see that 30-foot long pole that's going to be a pretty good challenge here in a minute. You'll notice leaning against the top of the cabin on the right side there is one of those long skid poles. 2 of those will be used to skid this long 30-foot pole up on the top. They're now installed, as well as some ceiling rafters and the front porch posts. Roof rafters will now be attached to this pole along the side and to a center pole up at the peak of the roof.
We've come to the point now where we've got all of our ceiling joists up. We're ready to start setting the ridge pole and the rafters. And of course the ridge pole has to go right down the top of the roof so it can set the rafters up against it.
Like this.
But we've got to have some way of having that ridge pole stabilized up there at the right height. So before or while we're trying to get the first few rafters up with the braces and all to hold it. So we went to the woods, cut up some of these sassafras poles, and we put the first set up here on the front, and then we're going to put another set at the back of the building just like this. But we're hoping we'll be able to lay one end of the ridge pole up on a cross member that we don't have nailed up here yet. We'll go up about 4 feet and nail us a cross piece for that ridge pole to set on, and get all that stabilized, and maybe put us a brace or 2 from the the ceiling joist up to the ridge pole. Then we can start laying our rafters up on the ridge pole and have everything stabilized.
Brace at the back of the cabin is installed. Preparation is being made here for putting that all-important first lath all the way across the length of the edge of this roof here. What's happening now is they're preparing those laths across there for the shingles to be nailed to. And that opening in the end of the cabin there is where the fireplace is going to be, and this stack of stones here is what will be used to build the fireplace and the chimney at this end. Alright, now the proper place for this first lath across there is at the very, very end of these rafters. That's the slanted poles that are the very top of the roof. And then it will be 15 inches overhang on the end here. And then all the other laths that are going to go up this slope on these rafters here will be measured from that first one. These shake shingles have already been applied to this side, so you can get a little idea about what it's going to look like. In addition to completing that side of the roof over there, there's a lot of other work that has to be done here. Chinking between the logs and the fireplace are 2 major projects. Alright, these laths have been put on here so there will be something to nail the shingles to, and it was very important to get that first lath nailed at the very tip of these rafters that all the rest of them will be nailed to. And there's about a 16-inch overhang on the end there to minimize the amount of wind and rain that can come in there. The first laths here are 4 inches apart, and then that'll get the first run of these 18-inch shingles along the bottom here, and then thereafter all the way up to the top, the space between those laths will be 3 inches in order to make it come out even. Now these shingles may all look alike, but they are not. In fact, one difference is one end of them is thinner than the other, the feathered end. And that's just the way they come out in the splitting. So you put the thinner end at the top and the thicker end at the bottom. The bottom end is going to be the end that's exposed to the rain and the weather. Obviously, if we're going to lay this second thickness of shingles here on those cracks, we're not going to come out even. We got to have a little piece there that's a quarter or half or whatever you want to call it to put on the very end to make it come out even. So that first run of shingles down on the bottom there, that first row, that's just a single row. But the problem with that is that single row has some cracks in it. So in order to keep it from leaking, you got to lay another shingle. Again, remembering to have that feathered or the thinner part of the shingle at the top and the thicker one at the bottom where it's going to be exposed. And you have to put one of those over every crack down there or it's going to leak.
That'd be great, thank you. And you can get me a few more ordinary size.
Now that this next row of shingles is going across here, as we've already said, that's just a single layer. But it has to, each of these shingles have to be nailed across that crack down at the bottom. And they're brought up from the bottom far enough so that they can be nailed to this lath on the top here. When this next row goes on, one of the critical things is to be sure that it goes down far enough so that it's going to overlap and the water can't run through that crack there. Now, of course, there are a lot of things that you need to remember, Mr. Parton says, in putting one of these roofs on. And everybody has heard when you're up high somewhere, don't look down. But in this case, it takes 1,200 shingles for one side of this roof. So one of the things that you really need to remember when you put that first shingle on and for each subsequent shingle after that, whatever you do, do not look up and see how much more space you have to fill. The first lath will be extended all the way across on the ends, the very ends of these rafters, and then everything going up above will be measured to that. Mother Nature being Mother Nature, all these rafters did not grow with the same curves, same crooks, and sags at the same place. So shims are required to even things out, so that when those shingles are put across there, they won't sag.
Then we're going to come through here with the lath, just like we did on the roof. But these shingles will be standing straight up and down. And we'll nail them on just like we did on the roof. Lap them over so that they'll stop the rain and the wind from coming in the gable end of the cabin.
Mr. Stanley Ward Parton is now installing the shingles on this gable end here. He's nailing them to the laths that are attached to the rafters just like they did on the roof. And of course he's completing this job before the chimney is built higher. How are you going to heat this cabin?
Well, we're going to try to follow, of course, the pattern of the old people that settled in here. Just they would just gather stone wherever they could find it. Of course, we'll go to somebody that's picking it up, have them haul us some crates over or pallets over here. But we're going to go ahead and stack. I'm going to stack it, build the fireplace myself because I'm not a professional mason, and I don't want it to look like a professional did it. I want it to look like some poor fellow like myself was trying to build him a home to live in, just to get by. And that's what we're going to do.
Well, now, I understand that one of the flaws in some of those that are improperly built is that they may smoke. How are you going to prevent?
Well, that's a good question. There's a formula. I've searched and searched. There's a formula for building it. You've got to figure the size of the mouth of the fireplace, however many square feet it is. And then you reduce that throat in the back to about 1/10 of the area of the mouth of the fireplace. Then go on up the chimney until you've got to open it up above that to give what they call a smoke shelf. That increases the volume of the base of the chimney, and then you reduce it down as you go up until you get back to about that 1/10 of the area of the mouth of the fireplace.
The foundation, of course, was put in that hole that was dug down there, so it'd be on some secure footing. And then there's approximately 6 feet of stone has been laid here. And now there is a critical point. And that critical point is making sure that these stones are laid in here in such a way that when a fire is built, this fireplace will not smoke. And the formula is the throat, or the chimney, has to be 10% of the opening of the fireplace into the room. Now, it doesn't go immediately to the 10% opening up there, but if you can visualize an upside down funnel, and the front of the fireplace has to extend, the rocks there have to extend at least 8 inches down so that the smoke will gather up there and take off up the chimney and not come back into the room. In addition to not smoking, you need to make sure that the fire stays in the fireplace. You will notice that there's a white board there between the ends of those logs and the fireplace to ensure that the fire stays separate from the logs.
We'll try that.
We're standing outside the back of the cabin next to the chimney, and we're looking into the fireplace, into the cabin, through this 1 foot square hole. The size of this opening should be no more than 10% of the area of the opening of the fireplace into the cabin. This rock shelf that goes up to the edge of that opening there is referred to as the smoke shelf. The cabin side of this opening here actually slopes downward into the fireplace opening in the cabin. The height of this wall above that smoke shelf will continue to be raised until it's 24 inches above that smoke shelf. When it reaches that 24-inch height, that is where it will start to be sloped in. That sloping in will continue until the throat of the chimney equals roughly that same area of that opening right there. That will provide a chamber in which this volume of air that comes through that opening there can expand. And then it'll have to constrict again in order to get up that reduced throat of the chimney. And that constriction is the principle on which this fireplace design is based. That principle is that constriction increases velocity. If you've ever put your thumb on the end of a water hose to make it spray further, you have demonstrated this principle. As completion of the fireplace nears, so does the need to close some of these openings, such as doors, windows, and the openings between those logs. Filling those openings between the logs is referred to as chinking. And that is just filling that void between the logs with some sort of insulating material and then putting something over it to protect it, usually mud. But not just any mud. Mr. Parton was just commenting about how much stickier this compound is here than regular mortar. And that's the idea, is to be sticky so it will stick in between these logs. This is clay and water and straw. And here is where that mud is going to be applied. Now, first thing that happens so it won't require so much mud is these strips are put in here, these wooden strips, and as you can probably see there, the mud's already been applied on the inside, and later it will be applied out here. Now that noise you hear in the background is preparation of this clay. This clay has a little moisture in it, and it has great big clods in it. And those clods have to be broken up and rocks and things sifted out of it before it's mixed up.